We're still on chapter 23, and we're going to start off by talking about the pharynx and the esophagus, and then we're going to move on and talk about the stomach a little bit. So the pharynx is going to allow the passage of food, fluids, and air, and food is going to pass from the mouth to the oropharynx and then into the laryngopharynx. The esophagus is a flat muscular tube that runs from the laryngopharynx to the stomach, and when it's not involved in food propulsion, it is collapsed. It pierces the diaphragm at the esophageal hiatus, and it joins the stomach at the cardial orifice. Surrounding the cardial orifice is a gastroesophageal or cardiac sphincter, and what that does is it keeps the orifice closed when food is not being swallowed. We also find mucus cells on both sides of the sphincter that help to protect the esophagus from acid reflux. The pharynx and esophagus are both conduits that pass food from the mouth to the stomach, and the major function of both organs is propulsion that starts with deglutition, which is swallowing. Now we move on to the stomach. And the stomach is a temporary storage tank that this is the place where the chemical breakdown of protein starts. It's going to convert the bolus of food that was created in the mouth by mixing food and saliva to a paste like chyme. And then the stomach has a volume of about 50 milliliters, but it can expand up to 4 liters. And this is an image of the stomach. I didn't go over the layers and the actual parts of the stomach. That's something that you will do in lab. This is also a stomach. This is a human stomach. And again, you go over the parts of this in lab. I will talk about the microscopic anatomy of the stomach. And this is because this is where we're going to find a lot of the cells that secrete the gastric juices that play a really important role in digestion. So we're going to talk about the mucosa layer. And this consists of simple columnar epithelium entirely composed of mucus cells. And what they do is they secrete this 2-layer coat of alkaline mucus, and you end up finding a surface layer that traps this bicarbonate-rich fluid layer beneath it. They're dotted with gastric pits, which lead into gastric glands, and the gastric glands produce the gastric juice. So here we have the gastric pits, and this is a gastric pit. Down here is the gastric gland. There are types of gland cells. So the glands in the fundus and in the body, which are parts of the stomach, produce most of the gastric juice. The glands include secretory cells, and the secretory cells include mucous neck cells, parietal cells, chief cells, and enteroendocrine cells. So what we have here is we have the mucus cells, the parietal cells, the chief cells, and then the enteroendocrine cells. The mucous neck cells secrete thin acidic mucus, and the function is unknown at this point. The parietal cells secrete a couple things. They secrete hydrochloric acid, and hydrochloric acid is an acid, so it has a low pH of about 1.5 to 3.5. And what it's going to do is denature protein, activate pepsin, break down plant cell walls, and it also kills many bacteria. And then parietal cells also secrete intrinsic factor, and this is a glycoprotein that is required for the absorption of vitamin B12 in the small intestine. In fact, secreting intrinsic factor is the only thing that the stomach does that's essential for life. We have chief cells. Their secretions include pepsinogen, and this is an inactive enzyme that's activated to pepsin by hydrochloric acid and by pepsin itself. It's actually a positive feedback mechanism, which if you remember from AMP1, you don't see a lot of positive feedback mechanisms in the body. And then chief cells also secrete lipases, and these are going to digest about 15% of lipids. And then there are the enteroendocrine cells, and they secrete chemical messengers into the lamina propria. And some act as paracrines, like serotonin and histamine. Others act as hormones, like somatostatin and gastrin. And somatostatin also acts as a paracrine. And so what this is showing is we have a chief cell secreting pepsinogen, a parietal cell here secreting hydrochloric acid, and the hydrochloric acid is going to activate the pepsinogen or help convert it to pepsin. And then pepsin also plays a role in converting pepsinogen to pepsin. So the stomach, it is a harsh environment, right? I just talked about the fact that we have hydrochloric acid in our stomach. It's a really harsh environment, so it needs to be protected, and it's protected with a mucosal barrier. And this mucosal barrier is created by three factors. One is a layer of bicarbonate rich mucus. Two is the tight junctions between epithelial cells, which prevent the juice from seeping underneath the tissue. You remember tight junctions? We talked about that in AMP1 as well. And tight junctions, they make those cells snug next to each other, and they're hooked next to each other. And we find them in places like the bladder, where we do not want fluid leaking out. The third factor is damaged epithelial cells are quickly replaced by the division of stem cells. Surface cells are replaced every 3 to 6 days. These are your questions. This is all I have for you.